Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Flash Workshop. And in this Flash Workshop, what we're going to be doing is creating a very basic ActionScript 3 game. Now this game will teach you about variables. It will also teach you about how to use an if statement, and also importantly how to use dynamic text in ActionScript 3. If this is your first time coming to ActionScript 3, then this exercise will be great for actually looking at it, because there's some very different ways that ActionScript 3 handles dynamic text, and it can be quite confusing at first, and also there's lots of idiosyncrasies, the changes between 2 and 3. 3 is actually a harder language to learn and is far more strict in what you can do, and in such declaring variables, which we'll have a look at in this example, and I'll show you how declaring variables can still be done in an ActionScript 2 way, but as soon as you change it to an ActionScript 3 way, it will cause some issues, especially with dynamic text. So we'll look at that. But this is the game we're going to be creating. And all you do is you click on this button here. Now there's no down state on this, all I've used is a movie clip with an instance name. And there you go, 37 clicks in 10 seconds. You can see the seconds going down there in the output window. That is not my best, by the way. And all it does is there's my movie clip with an instance name, and I've got an ActionScript 3 layer here, ActionScript layer. If I press F9, you can bring up the ActionScript and you can see the ActionScript. Some of this will be created using the code snippets tool, which is fantastic in CS6 and allows you to create it. If you don't have CS6, later on when this code comes up, you can pause it and just copy it. But it's very, very useful for little quick bits of code, especially if you're learning. And it then goes to frame 2, and on frame 2 there's a dynamic text layer, and I've given that a instance name. But let's get started anyway. So let me close this down. Let me close that one down too as well. And if you open up your copy of Flash Professional, CS6 preferably, that's what I'm using. There might be some differences between 5 and 6. I kind of skipped a generation, I went from 4 to 6, so I'm kind of aware about what's going on in 5, but generally 6 is the version I'm working with now. So if I create a new ActionScript 3 layer, sorry, ActionScript 3 file, and I'm here on the main stage. Now, I'm not going to mess around with any of the property settings. You can see the property settings for the stage over here on the right. I'm fine with that. Just make sure that you're targeting Flash Player 11.2 in my example, and you're also targeting ActionScript 3.0, which shows that you've selected the right document. Interestingly, actually, it's worth looking into, and I'll be doing future tutorials on this. You can also target Air and iOS and desktop now in Flash CS6, which allows you to make apps, which is fantastic. So you could easily turn this game into an app as well. But first of all, let's get started. What I'm going to do is create a new layer. Well, use the layer I've got and rename it, sorry. I'm going to call it button. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw an object on the stage. So I just got the rectangle tool from here and drew a rectangle on the stage. If your layout's different from mine, by the way, you can always come up to the top here and change it to whatever. I'm using Essentials at the moment. But there's all different ones, you might be on something different. So anyway, what I've done is now collected the selection tool, and I'm going to select the object, convert it to a symbol by right clicking on it, and I'm going to call this button. I remember that this name that I'm converting to a symbol, this name I'm giving it now, has no relevance to its actual coding name. It's the name of the symbol that will appear in the library. And in fact, button underscore MC to tell me that it's a movie clip. Now you could use a button if you wished. I generally use movie clips more often because if I want to create a more complex button with good transition animations and things, this is what I'd do. So I normally just use a movie clip. And there we go. You can tell that that's converted now because it's got a, well, you can't really, but it's got a blue line around it. So you should see a blue line around it depending on the color you've made as well. Right. I'm going to go over to the property window with that selected, Now just look carefully actually as well. See the properties window here. If I click anywhere on the document, it always changes to the properties of what you're selecting. So I select the object, instance name, and I'm going to call this BTN. And there we go. Now I'm going to create the ActionScript layer. So I create a new layer down here, and I'm going to call it AS. Some people call it ActionScript. It's always best practice to have your ActionScript layer on top. So in case someone else working on the document with you, you can easily find ActionScript. And if I press F9, it brings up my ActionScript layer. So what I'm going to do first of all is declare a variable. Now I'm going to deliberately do this in an ActionScript 2 method at the moment, and then later on we're going to explore the ActionScript 3 method to show you how it's changed, and you can still declare variables in this way. So if you've done variables, you'd normally just declare a variable var, and we're going to have score equals 0. So later on we'll create the button, which when you press it, it will increase the score. And that is an ActionScript 2 kind of method for declaring a loose variable. Next we're going to go btn dot add event listener, and this is the new way of creating buttons in ActionScript 3 compared to the btn.onPress equals function method. So you declare a listener, and a listener is almost like a piece of code that is going to look out for an object being interacted with. So I've created a listener here, and the type of listener, well, we're looking out for a mouse event. So if I type in mouse with a capital M and event with a capital E, dot, and click, all capitals. So this object now, the button object, which we've created with the instance name, is now looking out for a mouse event, which is going to be a click mouse event. And then if you put a comma at the end of that, now we're going to create the function. So we're going to call this function, let's call it MC for movie clip. It could be anything you want that, as long as you keep using that instance, that function name. And there we go. I'll close that down. And there we go. Right. In fact, what I'm actually going to do now is, just so it's easier for you to see, is I'm actually going to increase the size of my code here. To do that, if I go down to Edit and Preferences, ActionScript, and let's just increase the size perhaps up to 18. There we go, and that makes it easier for you to see. And that's, you know, if sometimes if you're working on this is a full HD monitor now, which most people are starting to work with. If you're working on a monitor like that, sometimes the text can be really small and give you eye strain, so it's quite useful to sometimes bring your code up in size. Okay, let's write this movie clip function now. So function MC, and what we're going to do now is we need to tell it that this function relates to a movie clip, and we need to put a variable there to hold it. So I'm going to call my variable E. You'll see loads of people call it event or ENT or I. You can call it anything you like, this variable that holds it. So I'm going to call mine E, and then use a colon, and it brings up a drop down list, and it's actually the event here. This is always the event name, mouse event, or you know, if you're just using a normal event, it'll be event or something, but it's whatever you used there will be the will be what you type next. So mouse event, there we go, and close that down. And now what I'm going to do is open up the event handler, press enter, and CS6 automatically puts in the closing event handler. So what we're going to do now is score, and now I want to add on what the value of 1 to my score every time I click this button. Now how would you do that if you haven't done this before? Some of you probably know already, it's quite simple, but if I put equals 1, what would happen here is if I click on the score, it's always going to equal the value of 1. So if I press it the first time, it's 1, second time, it'd still be 1, and if I did +1, it's the same thing, it's positive value of 1. So you need to add on the value of 1 if you think about it that way, and what you do is just click here and it's plus equals 1. and that's the end of that code. Some people will also do it this way. You could do plus plus, and plus plus means exactly the same thing. That's adding the value of 1. Some people say it's faster. It's a faster method of adding value of 1, and the processor will be able to figure it out quicker. But plus equals 1, I like doing, because you can change that value to another 1 if you wanted to at some point. And there we go. So that now is going to add the value of 1. And in fact, let's just do something here just to show that. If I just, in between this code here, type trace, and we're just going to trace score there, and you'll see down in my trace output window now, that is adding, every time I click on it, the value of 1. So let's close that down and trace score, get rid of that. Okay, so all that's left now really to do is to add a timer that after a certain amount of seconds will grab that score and it will go to a second frame. Now timers are, they're not easy bits of code to write, they're not hard either, but sometimes it's one of those ones that you've always got to remember how it's done. And this is new in AS3 CS6, according to me it is anyway. I don't know if it's been in CS5, but code snippets is fantastic, and there's so many fantastic little bits of code here. You can, mobile touch for tap events, drag events, mobile gestures. So it makes making mobile apps really, really easy, or at least easier anyway. But in the actions here, so you've got go to web page, which would be like the go to URL. It's really helped with the transition between AS3 2 and AS3 3, just to get started actually. And what we're going to do is have a countdown timer here, and all I do is double click on this, and it adds countdown timer code. Now what it's done is it actually created its own ActionScript layer. I'm just going to take this code, highlight it all, Control X, take it to my ActionScript layer code, and just after the event handler is closed, I'm just going to paste it there, and I'm going to delete that other layer which said actions. Now, how cool is that? I mean, it's made things so simple, and coding should be simple. As simple as possible anyway. It's always good. It's always a good program that makes simple programming. And here it's got countdown timer, countdown to a specific number of seconds, and it's even got instructions on how to do it. And what they've done is they've set up a variable here that equals 10, and it transforms this into actual seconds as well. So you don't even have to know any of this. 10 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever you like, that will change it. And that for me is such a useful bit of code. Now if I publish that, you'll see down here they've a function as well. It's an event, and it's a timer event. Remember what I said earlier? The timer event will relate to the listener event there. So that's always quite an easy way of doing it. And see, they've used event there as the code. Some people put void here, and I could have done that up here as well. What void does is it allows you to carry extra data within inside that function, and void says no, I'm not going to do that. You don't actually need to do that for the moment. Not at this level anyway. This is just a basic game. So don't worry about writing void or not. I find the easiest way to transition from AS3 2 to AS3 3 was to take the absolute basics first and then start adding bits. Let's publish this a sec. And now you can see 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Yeah? So that's the countdown code going here because it's tracing it there. And interesting enough, it's minus minus. So where I said you could use plus plus up here, they're using minus minus to take away 1 second every time. Now, there's our timer in the game. We'll come back to this in a second, but we need somewhere for this to go. So if I just close down the code a sec and go to the timeline, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to drag it underneath my ActionScript layer, and I'm going to call this score. Oh, if I can spell score right. Let's try that one again. S-C-O-R-E. And I'm going to insert a blank keyframe on frame 2. Now all I'm going to do, just to show this code's working, is just get the text tool from over here. And let's get a 57, that's fine for me, you could up yours. This is just to show that it's working. And I'm on classic text and static text for the moment. I'm just going to type 2 in there. And now let's go back to our code layer. So I click inside the keyframe of the ActionScript layer there, press F9. And now we need to write a piece of code. Now, you can't just put go to and stop 2, because if we do that, and that is the same as ActionScript 2 as well, you can't just put go to and stop 2 because in here, which is the function handler, because if we do that, it's just going to go to and stop frame 2 straight away. What we need to do is have an if statement, and we need an if because it's constantly minusing 1 here, and we need to say if the score is, or if the time is equivalent to 0, and that's this variable here. So if that number there is equivalent to 0, go to and stop frame 2. To do that, it's just a simple if statement. If, and I open up the condition. I'm just going to copy that and paste it into there. Countdown seconds is equivalent to 0. Close down the condition, open up the event, and go to and stop frame 2. And that should be it. Let's check it out. Now, why is it doing that? So the first thing you have to think is, this is quite a common mistake actually. All that's happening is the code's all right, but it's going from frame 1 to frame 2 very fast. So what we just have to do up here is add a stop. In fact, you can put that anywhere, but it's general practice as well to put that at the top. And now it'll be countdowning 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. There you go. It's actually is 10 seconds. It looks like it goes a little bit before, but that's because by the time it's outputted in the output window, it's a little bit of a delay. So on 10 seconds, it does go to frame 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of that trace statement now. I could get rid of it this way by just deleting it, or you could comment it out by putting 2 forward slashes in, and that will comment it out. So that's basically the main part of the game done. Now we need the dynamic text. Let me just close this. So dynamic text in ActionScript 3 is handled completely differently. In ActionScript 2, you were able to give dynamic text an instance name, and it would automatically appear the variable that you were using into that dynamic text box. And basically, I mean, there's some variations on it. But if I go to the score over here, and I'm just going to delete that text, and we're going to get the text tool, and select classic text as TFL text now as well, but just going to use classic text and dynamic text. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out a text box here. You'll notice down in the options window, the variable feature is not supported. It'll only be supported in ActionScript 1 or 2. Or higher, which doesn't quite make sense because we are higher. So, you know, but ActionScript 3 is not supported. So, how is it able to now target here? Well, what we do is we go to the instance name and we give it an instance name. I'm going to call this score txt for score text, and it's basically like it's a more of a movie clip this time, and we have to target this movie clip. So go back to the ActionScript here, and inside this statement here, the if statement, let's type score txt. Now it's not just that, that's almost like the movie clip name. We have to do score.txt dot text, and that will target the movie clip and then the text within inside of it, equals score. So I'm just going to bring this number down to say 3 for the moment so we can just do faster testing. Oh, and also now with dynamic text you have to embed it because you'll get this error. So if I just go to the second frame, timeline second frame, click here, and you'll see there's embed function. I want to embed. Embedding text as well will increase the file size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to embed just the numerals because that's all we're using. Let's try that again. Okay, click, 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 click. 12 clicks in 3 seconds. So that's the basics of the game. Now I want to show you something different about variables, because variables in AS3 3 are generally strict variables. What I've done is basically created a loose variable like ActionScript 2, and that's supposed to be a slower method. If I just click on the ActionScript layer and press F9, bring it up again, this will cause not only the program to run faster, but it will also help with error correction, because variables will only be able to hold a certain type of data. For example, this var score that we've got here, which equals 0, is a number. We know that that's a number, or it could be seen as an integer as well because it's going up. And because that is in a loose form at the moment, if someone was to change score to equal, say, a string, like a name or something, it wouldn't pick up on it in ActionScript 2. But in ActionScript 3, if you declare it as strict, then it will, and that allows less errors to be made. So your variable on a large program, you might forget what things have been called, or something might be passed to it. And what we're going to do is just open up a colon and type, I'm going to call this is an integer, int, default package. And so now the score is an integer and it equals 0. How is that going to affect this here? You'd think it wouldn't affect it. It's still a variable that's holding something. Let's just publish it, and you'll get this error come up, 1067, and it relates to the type of string. Now what's happened is this has become a strict number that's being held, but when text needs to be a string, almost like a word that's coming out, even if it's a number you're using. So what you have to do now is declare that the type of output that you want for this is to be a string. So if I just delete that bit which says score there and type string, and the string I want to be converted, if you like, is score, and that will now do the same thing, but that's using strict variables, and that's the preferred method. It's just a bit hard to get your head around at first, because it almost seems that with ActionScript 3 there's always another step, another thing you have to do with ActionScript 3, and you know, I come from more of a designer background, so it doesn't quite suit me as much, but I'm getting more used to it now. Whereas before it kind of made logic sense. You know, you want to go to frame 2 and press a button, you put on press and you go to frame 2. And this it's far more complex, but it is 10 times faster for the Flash player to handle if done optimally. But anyway, that's the basics of the game. If you want to create, right, here we go. I'll see if you can beat me now. Actually, I've gone to 10 and press Control and Enter. Let's see what we can get. "66 clicks in 10 seconds. It's alright. But if you want to, that's just a scoreboard. You know, that's a basic score conversion there. But if you'd like to go to another tutorial now for the Mochi, or Mochi, but I think it's Mochi, the Mochi scoreboards, I'll show you how to create an online scoreboard with results and, you know, prizes like gold, silver and bronze and things like that. And if you search my videos for Mochi scoreboard tutorial, then you can continue this, and it will show you how to actually create quite a complex online scoreboard, and it's very simple as well, and you can use it for other games and everything like that. So join me for the next tutorial. Thank you very much.